taking time to join us here on Josh and Swain. Go back to your playing days or just knowing the history of this series even after you left Florida. What comes to mind when Tennessee-Florida comes up?
Yeah, it's funny because, as a lifelong Gator fan, this was a game that really didn't have much history between the two schools. And then, I remember my senior year in high school, Florida went up to Knoxville and got drilled in 1990, and then came back here in 91, my year I got redshirted, my first year at Florida, and we were able to win that one. So it became kind of an instant rivalry, and as Jason was mentioning there, like more times than not, it was not only the game that was deciding who was going to go to the SEC championship, but it was the team that won that game was more times going to end up the SEC champion too. So there was so much on the line, especially in an early season game in September. It just was everything, and makes me a little sad that game has waned in importance. I think Florida fans now would probably consider Tennessee maybe the fourth or fifth most important game on the schedule behind Georgia and Florida State, LSU maybe, but I like the fact that with the resurgence of Tennessee's program under Josh Heupel and with Florida hopefully heading in the right direction under Billy Napier, that this could get back to not only determining, the team that could represent the SEC East, but maybe bring some of the balance of the conference back to the Eastern Division side as well.
Chris, I know for me, I always look at the wide receiver play at Tennessee. You are a legend at that position. Broke records, had big games. I know I grew up watching you, and you were one of the reasons why I wanted to play at Florida growing up is watching you play. What's your take on the Florida passing game so far this season?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it, man. It means a lot. And I look at where Florida is right now, last in the conference in passing, and by far in 14th place there. You can look at the receivers, and I certainly think that they need to upgrade a little bit. There's not a whole lot of diversity in terms of size and skill. Ricky Pearsall has been a nice addition to the existing group of wide receivers coming over from Arizona State is kind of the guy that plays in the slot and brings a little bit of quickness and suddenness to that position. But Florida mostly has a bunch of bigger guys that don't necessarily stretch the field quite as well as you'd like. So I think you go back a couple years ago, Florida had some really nice diversity at the pass catcher position. Kyle Pitts was a tight end, but was a glorified receiver as well with what you could do with him. You had Kadarius Toney, who was really probably the biggest difference maker, X-factor guy with what he could do in the slot and how quick he was and getting him the ball in a number of different ways. And then Trayvon Grimes, who was a bigger body guy. But I think right now the problem is not as much the receivers as it is the quarterback situation. And I love Anthony Richardson. I think he's certainly done a lot to get people excited with what he can do athletically. But the consistency throwing the football is not there yet. And Billy Napier talked a lot this week about how good he was in the first half against USF. You turn the tape on, he was 7-9 in that first 30 minutes of that game, delivered some really nice balls on time and accurately. And then all of a sudden, things kind of deteriorated with his decision-making and some of the throws. It's very interesting to hear him talk as well because there's a lot of reference to having an early throw that rattled him against Kentucky and then starting to doubt himself after he threw some interceptions. Like, outside of the cornerback position, I don't know if there's a more important position to be able to turn the page and move on to the next play than at the quarterback spot. And I think right now what he's dealing with has more to do with what's going on between his ears than it does his actual physical capabilities because the sky's the limit in terms of God-given talent for Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, we're talking to Chris Doering, analyst with ESPN and the SEC Network. So, Chris, what would be your best guess as to what Florida tries to do early to get something going offensively? What do you think Tennessee tries to do to make sure Florida still has some offensive problems this Saturday?
Yeah, honestly, guys, I think Florida's strength, surprisingly to me at least, is the offensive line. The offensive line is much improved from where they've been the last couple of years. Has been able to get a considerable push against the first three opponents they've played this year. The running back trio, too, Montrell Johnson, a transfer from Louisiana, came over with Coach Napier. The freshman Travis Etienne's little brother, and then Naquan Wright, a guy that's been around for a couple years, have been a nice complement to what Anthony Richardson can do on the ground. So quite honestly, the game plan to me is much more like an NFL game plan. It's run the football. It's try to stay ahead of the chains, leave yourself in some third and manageable opportunities to convert, and utilize the play-action pass off of the success of the run game. And I think you go back and look at some of the best throws that Richardson's made this year. It's when he's outside of the pocket. Asking him to stand in, take his steps, and throw is probably not the best thing for him right now. So let's get him outside. Let's put some pressure on the defense with the opportunity for him to run if nothing's there, and see if he can't just throw instead of thinking too much. So my plan would be, run the ball as much as possible, try to take the air out of the game, keep that offense for Tennessee on the sideline, and hope that you can get into the fourth quarter with a one-possession ball game.
You've seen Tennessee play 3 games. Florida's played 3 games. Which individual matchup are you looking forward to seeing? You know how this game is. It's about winning one-on-one matchups. Is there a matchup that stands out to you that you look forward to paying attention to during the game?
Jay, you know this, man. We talk as much as you and I want to talk about the passing game. The series history has always been about the team that's been able to run the ball more successfully. And I look at maybe what are 2 perceived weaknesses of these 2 teams. I know that Tennessee fans have been a little underwhelmed by the ability to run the ball to this point in time. And then on the flip side, Florida's defense has not been good at all against the run. And typically it's been the second half where they've worn down. I think that has to do a lot with the lack of depth on the defensive line and at the linebacker position. But with Ventrell Miller out last week, that was the get-go. That was the case from the get-go. South Florida able to run for over 200 yards in the first half alone against the Gator defense. They did make some adjustments, but had a hard time with some of the formations and motions and shifts that South Florida was utilizing. So I don't expect Ventrell Miller to be back this week, and I think that's kind of the thing I'm keeping my eye on the most is, can Tennessee have success running the football, and can that age-old adage in this rivalry stay true another year with the team that runs the ball the best ends up winning the game?
Hey, Chris, it is year 2 for Josh Heupel, so there was the off-season conversation. Okay, year 1 to year 2, how do teams react to what Heupel's doing? What have you thought early on in the season about seeing Tennessee's offense, the wide receivers, and I asked that with Cedric Tillman being questionable for this week, but kind of in general, what Josh Heupel has continued to do offensively with the Vols?
Full disclosure, I love Josh Heupel. It's been a pleasure getting to know him over the last year and a half. He actually won the Steve Spurrier First-Year Coach of the Year award, which I'm a part of down here in Gainesville. He was a co-recipient with Shane Beamer. So, I think looking at what the expectation level was last year heading into the season with all of the departures through the transfer portal and ended up having that 7-win season that they did, ending, with a little bit of success in the second half of the year, had everybody real excited. And the story has been the offense. I'm with you. I coming into the year, how were they going to replace Velus Jones Jr.? Cedric Tillman's been huge, but seeing last week, once he went out, seeing Jalen Hyatt step up, Brew McCoy and what he's been able to do, I'm anxious to see more of Squirrel. I think that they are, building a nice wide receiver core, but at the end of the day, the success that they've had and the success that they're going to have has more to do with the defensive side of the ball. I love watching the way that they fly around defensively. They've been able to get a little bit more pressure. And really the key moment in that game against Pitt was the interception by Trevon Flowers in the end zone. A chance to go up 17-0, get some pressure on the quarterback with Beasley and force a throw that ends up getting picked off. And ultimately, instead of 17-0, it becomes 10-7 when Tennessee goes down and drives. I've been really impressed with that side of the ball, and I think with that improvement, they need some continued improvement in the secondary, but I think that is going to be the ultimate key to how far this Tennessee team can go this year.
Chris, out the door, have you made a pick for what happened Saturday between Tennessee and Florida?
I've not made an official pick, but I'm not feeling good about my alma mater. I got to be honest with you. I know the largest spread in Tennessee's favor in a long, long time, and I just have concerns about Florida's ability to score with Tennessee. If it ends up being more of a track meet, I don't know that Florida has the explosiveness they need right now to be able to match scores with the Vols.
Yeah, we will see coming up in just a couple of days, and hopefully on both sides, Tennessee and Florida, this becomes what the series was when you were playing, when Swain was playing as well in this matchup. Hey, Chris, thanks so much for taking time to join us today. Great information. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.